Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. The calendar is often presented as a tidy grid of dates. But history itself is less like a planner and more like a chaotic group chat where every century keeps arguing with the last one. April 20th is a date that repeatedly exposes humanity's favorite habits: grabbing power, rewriting the rules, discovering new worlds, and occasionally blowing something up that probably should not have been blown up. What becomes clear across centuries is that human beings rarely change their instincts. We simply upgrade the technology we use to make the same questionable decisions. Today's journey moves from ancient myth to modern protest movements, from royal intrigue to corporate disasters, and from battlefield ambition to scientific breakthroughs that quietly reshape civilization. Segment 1, and empires built on family drama and violent branding. History repeatedly shows that some of the most powerful civilizations begin with what today would absolutely become a viral family court case. On the eve of Rome's legendary founding in 753 BC, Romulus and Remus argued over city zoning with the intensity of two brothers fighting over the last slice of pizza. Except instead of passive-aggressive texting, one of them committed fratricide and created the Roman Empire. The Romans then built an entire identity around the idea that violence was not a bug, but a feature, essentially launching a civilization whose branding strategy was, "We will conquer everything and also build excellent roads." That tradition of power struggles continued centuries later, when Baldwin III literally besieged his own mother to take control of Jerusalem, proving once again that medieval family therapy was mostly just trebuchets followed by an awkward reconciliation dinner. Meanwhile, the Battle of Marj al-Safar in 1303 showed the Mongols finally encountering something stronger than their cavalry: geography, exhaustion, and the realization that even unstoppable empires occasionally lose when they stop paying attention to terrain and start believing their own hype. Segment 2, and power vacuums and the world's worst office meetings. If there is one lesson April 20th teaches repeatedly, it is that political systems hate a vacuum almost as much as politicians hate losing. Cicero's quiet retreat from politics in 46 BC reads like the intellectual version of muting a chaotic group chat, recognizing that sometimes survival means switching from public debate to writing books that future generations will pretend they have read. The Year of the Four Emperors in 69 AD demonstrates what happens when leadership becomes a game of musical chairs played with actual armies, culminating in Vitellius proving that even the most powerful empire can briefly be run by someone best remembered for overeating and making poor branding choices. Then, in 1653, Oliver Cromwell dissolved the Rump Parliament by storming into the chamber with soldiers and insulting elected officials with the energy of someone leaving a brutally honest online review, reminding everyone that revolutions often promise democracy, but frequently deliver another strong man with better posture and a louder voice. Segment 3, and exploration, empire, and the complicated business model of progress. Exploration has always been marketed as curiosity, but it often doubles as a very aggressive real estate strategy. Captain James Cook's arrival in New South Wales in 1770 expanded European maps while simultaneously shrinking indigenous autonomy, proving that discovery is often just colonization with better PR. That same year, the Battle of Espinza demonstrated that alliances are only reliable until they are not, as Georgia fought off the Ottoman Empire after being abandoned by Russian allies, reinforcing the timeless diplomatic truth that international partnerships often come with fine print written in invisible ink. Meanwhile, France declaring war on Austria in 1792 shows how revolutions frequently spiral into conflicts that nobody fully understands, but everyone is suddenly obligated to participate in, ultimately launching decades of war that reshaped Europe and created the perfect conditions for Napoleon to emerge as history's most ambitious overachiever with a hat collection. Segment 4, and scientific breakthroughs that quietly change everything. Some of the most transformative moments in history do not involve armies or speeches, but rather someone staring at a flask and realizing the universe behaves differently than expected. Louis Pasteur's successful pasteurization test in 1862 demonstrated that invisible microbes were responsible for spoilage and disease, effectively proving that the greatest threat to humanity was not witches or curses, but extremely small organisms that refused to respect expiration dates. A few decades later, Marie and Pierre Curie isolated radium chloride in 1902, unlocking nuclear physics and cancer treatments while also unintentionally inventing the world's most dangerous nightlight. Scientific breakthroughs often begin with curiosity, but frequently end with society scrambling to understand the consequences, reminding us that knowledge is power, but also, occasionally, radiation poisoning. Segment 5, and industrialization, protest, and the human cost of progress. The Ludlow Massacre of 1914 revealed that industrial progress often arrives accompanied by deeply uncomfortable questions about who benefits and who pays the price. Coal miners striking for safer working conditions were met with machine gun fire, demonstrating that early 20th century labor negotiations occasionally resembled military operations more than human resource meetings. Nearly a century later, the Deepwater Horizon explosion in 2010 showed that technological sophistication does not eliminate risk. It simply increases the scale of the potential disaster. 11 workers lost their lives, millions of barrels of oil poured into the Gulf of Mexico, and corporations rediscovered the public relations value of appearing concerned after the damage is already done. The pattern is difficult to miss. Innovation accelerates faster than accountability, and the consequences often arrive long before the lessons are learned. Segment 6, and modern crises, media, and the strange theater of public accountability. The late 20th and early 21st centuries demonstrate how technology amplifies both tragedy and transparency. The Columbine High School massacre in 1999 forced society to confront uncomfortable realities about violence, media influence, and institutional preparedness, permanently altering how schools approach safety and crisis response. In 2021, the conviction of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd showed how the presence of a camera can fundamentally alter the trajectory of justice, transforming individual tragedy into global protest and forcing institutions to confront accountability in ways they historically avoided. Meanwhile, the Cold War shoot-down of Korean Airlines Flight 902 and the Apollo 16 lunar mission remind us that technological progress can lead simultaneously to breathtaking achievement and near-catastrophic misunderstanding. Because humans have always been capable of building remarkable machines while still occasionally pressing the wrong button. In conclusion, April 20th reveals that history is not a neat progression toward enlightenment, but rather a continuous negotiation between ambition and consequence. Empires rise through confidence, and sometimes collapse through overconfidence. Scientific breakthroughs improve lives while introducing new ethical dilemmas. Political systems promise stability, but repeatedly rediscover chaos. The connective thread across centuries is not perfection, but persistence. The stubborn human tendency to continue experimenting, governing, discovering, and occasionally making spectacular mistakes. If history teaches anything, it is that progress rarely moves in a straight line, but it does move, carried forward by individuals convinced that their moment in time is somehow different, even when it looks remarkably familiar.